Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Firebase After Hours, where we talk about exciting stuff from around the Firebase universe. My name is Peter, and usually I would be joined by my co-host, Noe, but Noe had to attend an urgent matter, so unfortunately he can't be here with us today, but we'll say hi to him. Before we get started with today's topic, I'll just remind everybody that this is a community event, so let's be excellent to each other. So if you use the live stream, you can ask your questions, but please use polite language. So if you don't agree with something that somebody says, maybe tone it down a little bit. If you like something, you can always give it a thumbs up. And you can also use the emojis. So let me try that out. So for example, let's send some hearts. And the party popper, of course. All right, so today's topic is very near and dear to my heart. It is literally one of the first things that I worked on when I started on the Firebase team. It is part of probably most applications out there, if not all applications. It is authentication. You need to know who your users are, right? And Firebase Authentication makes that easy. And I'm super happy that today we have two experts on this topic that can help us to really get into the details and explain how this works. And we're going to focus mostly on Android today, but if you've got any questions about any of the other platforms, please feel free to ask them in the chat as well, and we'll try to get you answers for them. So without further ado, let me bring in our guests. So here is Marina. Hello, Marina.
Hello, how are you?
How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good as well. All right, so let's bring in our second guest, and here is Diego. Hey, Diego.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well.
Amazing. Cool. So before we get started with our topic, we always ask our guests one icebreaker question, and that is, when you're coding, what is your preferred way of indenting? Is it tabs or spaces, and how many of them? Marina, do you want to go first?
I can go first. I'm a tab person, and I don't have a really, to be very honest, if I had to do spaces, I would also do, but I would do four. But I don't know, I just, since the first company that I joined over 10 years ago in tech, the person that was my mentor said use tabs, and that just stuck with me, and I just never considered going a different way. So it's more out of like that advice that I received 12 years ago than for preference per se.
OK, cool. How about you, Diego?
So I'm a product manager, so I don't code extensively in my day-to-day. I do run queries and similar stuff, though, and I will confess that I'm guilty of using the auto-format function a lot. And so that will basically auto-indent my queries without me needing to use either tabs or spaces. So I'm bailing on the question, I guess, but that's my method.
OK, but so here's, I think I will get you. So you know that at the end of the sentence, when you put your full stop or exclamation mark, there seems to be a school of thought that says you need to put two spaces or one space after the sentence ending sign. So which one do
I
you
always
prefer?
single space. I always use single
OK.
space. Yeah.
OK. Yeah, interesting. So I bet if we had a tech writer on the call, they might say two spaces.
That is probably right. Yes.
All right, cool. So, and people on the stream, let us know what's your preference. So spaces or tabs, and how many of them. So I use spaces. but I use the tab key to indent, but it will end up being spaces. And it's 2 of them usually. So in the beginning, I really didn't like it, but I've grown used to it. And it's specifically when you have UI code these days with Swift UI or Compose, I think it's pretty useful. So, authentication. Authentication. So maybe we can start with first principles. What is it? Why is it important? And what is this Credential Manager thing that you want to talk about today? And how can it make things easier for us?
Okay, I can start with that. So an authentication system is important in any application because you need to know, any developer, any company needs to know who a user is, to know what kind of data they have access to in the application. So an authentication system helps you to understand who each user is and what data you can grant access to. And Firebase Authentication, which is what I'm here to talk about, and is one of my favorite. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, but it is one of my favorite products in Firebase. I don't know if you can see that by the amount of videos I released for this product. Yeah, so Firebase Authentication is a service that helps developers signing their users into their mobile, web, Unity, Android, Apple platforms, Flutter, web, and Unity apps. And we offer a lot of different authentication methods, which I want to show at some point today in the Firebase console. But we have anonymous authentication, which is basically it enables you to create a guest account, as in the users don't have to input any kind of data to have their data protected by that authentication system. But also the classic email and password, phone authentication, and federated identity providers. And for the identity providers, we have lots of them. We have Apple, we have, Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, okay, but we have Twitter, we have Google, and many others that I'm going to show in the console. Today, I would like to focus more and show the code that I recently built for signing with Google, using the Firebase Authentication service. And in order to sign in with Google, we need to get a token that represents the ID token of the user that's trying to sign in. And the recommended way to do that is Credential Manager. So I'm going to let Diego talk more about that now.
Sure. So what we realized a couple of years ago on Android is that users were, and developers alike, were dealing with a lot of complexity in authentication. And I think it's a common challenge that many users kind of refer to. That is like, hey, do I use my password? Do I use signing with Google? Do I use an email link, or do I use something else? And then on the developer side, there was a similar need as well, right? Which was, there are many APIs, there are many solutions, and developers, and those solutions have overlapping spaces. And so how could we simplify both the user interaction and the developer story was kind of the starting point. And that's why we created Credential Manager, which is a framework, if you want, consisting of some native APIs and a Jetpack library that developers can integrate with to handle all their authentication flows. It supports many multiple credential types, such as passwords, passkeys, and signing with Google, all in a single request. And for the user, all of those options are shown in a single dialog, and they are smartly deduplicated. So for instance, if you have a passkey and a password for the same username, only the passkey will be offered in the primary dialog, because that's what we think it's the best authentication method to sign in. And so this has been around for some time now, and we're very excited to see that Firebase now has an integration, and Firebase developers can leverage it as well.
So I had a question around that. So if I remember correctly, there were a couple of mechanisms in Android to authenticate users. So I remember something called Smart Lock. Is that still around? And if so, what's the relation to the Credential Manager, or is Credential Manager replacing that?
Yeah, over the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, many authentication solutions have been made available on Android, and Smart Lock for Password was one of them. There were a couple of libraries and APIs to support Google Sign-in or signing with Google. And we have made the decision to replace all of them with Credential Manager and consolidate all of those solutions into the single Jetpack library and native API. And so all the features that were previously supported, for example, in a Smart Lock for Passwords are for authentication, are now supported via a Credential Manager.
Okay, cool. So it's basically the one API to rule them all.
That is exactly the goal, and we are hearing great feedback from developers that it simplifies their code base, it simplifies the maintenance efforts because they just need to integrate with a single solution and not need to integrate with multiple.
Okay, cool. So I think maybe sorry, Marina, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Can I add something to this?
Sure.
Just because it's something that we've seen a lot in the, we've seen a lot of issues and feedback from the community on the Firebase UI library. So for those of you who don't know, the Firebase UI library, it's a library that we offer in our GitHub repository that you can integrate with your apps, and then you can have the UI, the authentication UI ready to go. And we were using Smart Lock until very recently, until like a couple weeks ago. And we've been seeing a lot of comments from the community to migrate to Credential Manager. And we just launched that a few days ago. Shout out to Rosario, who was leading this effort. And we now have the version 9 of the Firebase UI library for Android that uses Credential Manager. And there's a migration guide if you're using the Firebase UI library in the repository, so I recommend checking that out. And we, the person that worked on the code, made use of the Smart Lock to Credential Manager migration guide that is in the Google Identity documentation, and that's also a very good documentation. It guides you very well through the steps of migrating. In case anyone in this watching this is using Smart Lock, go check out that documentation, and it's very straightforward to move to Credential Manager.
I will paste the link to the Firebase UI for Android repository into the live chat so people can go and take a look. And I think the documentation that you mentioned is on the landing page of that repository, right?
Yes, there is a migration guide in the README, and from the migration guide, you can find the docs.
Okay, cool. All right. So how about we look at some code or a demo? Would that be possible?
Yeah. Let me bring
So which screen do you want me to present? This one?
Let's go with, oh, sorry, I moved the screen without. So that's, yeah, we can start here. We can start at the console, just running the app in Android Studio, but let's start on the console. So before we can add Firebase authentication to an Android app, we need to set up a few things in the console. The first thing being, let me find it. The first thing being coming to the authentication page and enabling the signing method that you want to use. For this app that I'm demoing today, which you can find in the Firebase video samples repository. Peter, if you could paste that link, that would be great. So yeah, for that.
Oh, the samples repository. Oh yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, so like if people wants to try the same code that I'm showing today, they can. So this is a basic note-taking app. And I initially had anonymous and authentication and email and password authentication. And I recently, at the end of last year, around November, I added the signing with Google using Credential Manager to this app. And all you have to do is come to the the authentication page, and then the signing methods tab, and add a new provider. And here, as I said earlier, you can see all the different authentication methods that we offer. And all the additional providers. And then you enable Google. In order to do that, you need to have the SHA-1 of your app registered here in the project settings. So when you register your app, you can add the SHA-1 certificate fingerprint, and that is necessary so you can enable signing with Google. But once you do, it's pretty straightforward. Or that's all the setup that you have to do on the console side, and then we can jump to code. So if you could show now, Peter, the Android Studio tab. Yeah, thank you.
Got it.
So let me show the demo first here. Oh, shouldn't have closed that tab. I'm sorry. Okay, so if I go, there are two different flows. Maybe before we do that, Diego, do you want to talk about the different flows, or do you want me to show them in the app?
Yeah, sure. I can talk a little bit about the two different flows. So basically what we have seen is that what delivers the best results is that the first flow is what we call the bottom sheet flow. And that means that when the user opens the app and goes into the login page, the developer can, at that point, call a Credential Manager and request Credential Manager to show to the user all the available credentials for the user. So the user, without even needing to tap on something on the app, will be prompted to sign in using one of the available credentials for them, which in this case could be a password or a sign in with Google option. So that's one flow. The other flow is what we call the bottom flow, which is maybe what people would be familiar with, which is the user opens the app and sees a button that says sign in with Google. User taps in there, and then the available accounts to use with signing with Google will be shown. And there are different features that are available on the different flows, and we can discover those as we see the demo maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so back on Android Studio, here's the app that I'm running. The code that is running here is on this tab, but I'm not going to show it now because I'm going to challenge myself to try and recreate this code that I created back in November with the code feature.
Pray to the demo gods.
Yeah. But this is the version that is working. So once I go to the account center and click on authenticate, the first flow that Diego just mentioned is once the user of your app goes to an authentication screen, it automatically shows this UI that you see here, showing all the options that you have. For this virtual device, I only have my Gmail, my test Gmail account, so I can use this to sign in. And that's it. I'm signed in. So let's test creating a note. Okay. And then if I sign out, okay, back on this UI, my note disappeared because this note now belongs to that user. And then if I go back again, the second flow that Diego mentioned is if someone dismisses this UI, you can still provide them with a way to sign in with Google by providing a button. And then if you click on the button, this is the other UI that you need to show. And then we can click on the account, and there you go. You have the note again, because now on the Firebase side, we verified that this user has access to this data, to this note that I'm storing in Cloud Firestore, and then I can show this note to the user. And if I sign out again, the note disappears again. So that's pretty much it for the demo. And then on the code side, I don't know if I'm going too fast. Feel free, Peter, to interrupt me.
Yeah, I think I had another question. So I think in the beginning we saw what we saw was the bottom flow, right, where the form pops up and allows us to sign in. So if the user, so now the user is in a signed out state. Let's assume that they're starting the app again. Would we see the bottom sheet again?
Yeah, when you go to the authentication page, if you're not signing, that will show up automatically again.
Okay, can you show that again?
Yep. So I'm signed out. So if I go to the authentication UI again, there you go. You see it here.
And what is great about that flow, Peter, is that the user is prompted with the available options that they have. So they don't even need to remember, oh, should I use my email or password here? Or should I use my Google account and signing with Google? Because they will be prompted with hey, finish your sign in. for this app using the available account. And so it decreases the mental load that users have, and that should increase also user satisfaction, conversion rates, and so on.
Yeah. I mean, that is a constant challenge, right? So you come to a page and then it offers this huge selection of, hey, you can sign in with email, with Google, with LinkedIn, with whatever, right? And then you're like, well, what did I use to sign in here the last time? And that is, I don't know, like I think I've ended up accidentally creating new accounts because I've forgotten that I've already signed in with Google, for example. Sometimes I have a connection, that I make. So, for example, I know that for everything that is any sort of developer product, I sign in using my GitHub profile. So that is kind of easy. But for many of the other ones, that is a super hard challenge. I mean, I use a cross-platform password manager, which has a feature now that says, well, you can, even if you sign in using a federated identity provider, like sign in with Google or sign in with Apple, we will take note of what you chose. And then we can tell you next time you come to a page, hey, last time you signed in using Google. But obviously, that only works on the desktop browser. It doesn't work on mobile, at least on iOS. I don't know if that would work on Android, because maybe there is more ways to plug in. But this feature here, that is fantastic, I think.
Yeah, and it's good that you call out other password managers that are not, the Google Password Manager. So Credential Manager, starting on Android 14, allows the integration with third-party password manager as well. So if you're using any of the, password managers out there, and you enable it in settings, then you will see your passwords or also your passkeys, if the app supports them, in the same, bottom sheet that Credential Manager is displaying.
Oh, that is fantastic. That is even better. I mean, lovely. This is so great.
Yeah, this is something that I haven't tested yet, but it is really awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. All right. So let's see some code. Or Marina, did you want to say something else before we go into the code?
I'm just gonna say, let me know if there's too much background noise, because my neighbor decided to drill in the wall right now. So
it's fine. So I did hear something, but I think it's fine.
Okay, yeah. It's full life experience.
What would happen if I said, no, it's too noisy? Would you just go over and say, I want to stream, stop it?
Yeah, basically. It's too easy. I'm already running a live demo and coding live. There's only a certain amount of risk that I can take.
No, I think it's fine.
Okay. So yeah, let me talk about the coding part for this demo, and then I'm going to show the code itself. So there are a few steps that you have to do to sign in with Credential Manager and Firebase, right? When you choose the option on either this bottom sheet or the button UI, the dialog UI, basically, what happens is that the user just granted you access to their credential, which is a credential object. And then you're going to take that credential object and extract the ID token from it. Once you extract the ID token from it, you can create a Firebase credential from that ID token, and that's the credential that you then use to sign in with Firebase. So it's 3 simple steps, so 3 lines of code from the moment that the user clicks on the option on Credential Manager. Now, the code to bring this Credential Manager to life is also pretty simple. So let me show you. So this is the first flow that we were talking about. And the first thing you need to do is create the ID option that you want to use. So for this flow that you can see my cursor, right?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. So for this experience here, you create a Google ID option. And then there are a few parameters that we can use here that I think maybe Diego can talk about the parameters in more detail later. The server client ID, It's pretty straightforward if you already use Firebase, because we provide this default web client ID. If you have the Firebase SDK, you already have that. You don't have to worry about that. And there are a couple more options that you can add to this, like adding a nonce for increased security, and another option that I don't remember now from the top of my head. But yeah, so you create this request, this credential option, and then you create a credential from that option, request from that option, sorry. And then you send this request to Credential Manager. And then the result will contain the credential. So this, when you execute this piece of code, this is when the bottom sheet will be launched. And then when the user clicks on that, it goes to this line. So this is a async function, it's a suspend function. So it means this line will only execute when we have the result. And then we can extract the credential from that result. In order to run the second flow, which is the button flow, the only thing that changes is that you have a different option that you're going to create the request with. So instead of a Google ID option, you have a signing with Google option. And then same thing for the server client ID. And the rest of the code is pretty much the same. So literally the only thing that differs from for these two flows is the type of ID option that you want, the signing with Google option or the get credential option. And then the rest is the same. You create a request, you send this request to Credential Manager and wait for the user to click on the option so you can extract the credential. It is very straightforward. And then, so you can see, just so I can show you those extra 3 steps, this is the method that I'm calling on the view model once this happens. The onRequest result sends the credential to this this function on the view model. For some reason, quick pause, for some reason, my brain cannot say function. It always goes back to method, even though I've been working with Kotlin for years now. It always defaults back to method, which is what I learned in college many years ago.
Isn't it a method after all? I mean, it's on an object.
It is.
Class. Sorry.
No, it is, but it's much more common to hear Kotlin developers saying function, but because it's literally fun.
Yep.
But I cannot get rid of method. It's just in my brain forever.
Yeah.
I think
I guess the main reason that it's called function is that fun makes a lot more sense than just abbreviating method to meth, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Good call. So yeah, here in this function, what we're doing is we're checking if the credential that we just received is the type Google ID token credential, sorry. Because for this specific app, what I'm doing is adding signing with Google. So I need to check that this credential is a Google credential. And then I will call Google ID token credential create from, and then I create an ID token from that credential data. And then I call the service, my service file connects to Firebase. And then what I do on the Firebase side is call the Google Auth provider to create the Firebase credential and then signing with that newly created credential. So here it's a bit spread because my architecture is very things happen in the UI, things happen in the model, things happen in the service. But if you were to have one single method, it would be 3 lines.
3 lines is a bit of a stretch, Marina, because
you had to word wrap them.
Yeah, I know, but they're broken. They're broken across multiple lines, right? I mean, like if you spread them into a very, very, very long line, then absolutely 3 lines.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't count with the Jetpack Compose code to actually launch the Credential Manager, I'm talking about like the difference once you have the credential. That from that on is pretty straightforward. Is extract the ID token, create a Firebase credential, sign into Firebase. Those are the 3 steps.
True. Yeah. Okay, so let's see if I got this right. So can we go back to the first file that you showed us, where you set up the requests, Okay. So first of all, you define what kind of request you want to perform, right? So using those options there. Then you put together the request, and then you send it to the Credential Manager. And when you call on request result, that will pop up the dialog. Is that correct?
No, that pops
Oh,
up.
okay. So that will do it. Okay, get credential. I missed that. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So yeah, go ahead, Diego.
Yeah, and I think two additional details to call out. If you scroll down a little bit on the first request that you were showing, there is one parameter which is called set filter by authorized accounts.
Yes.
And that is very important. What that parameter does is that it only shows accounts that the user has previously used with signing with Google for this app. And so that way we can ensure that we're only showing accounts that the user has used and that they will be able to successfully sign in. Or if you prefer, you can not filter by authorized accounts and show all the accounts to the user that are available to sign in or sign up. And if the user chooses to use an account that has never been used on your app, then they will effectively create a new grant. So that's one important parameter. Our guidance usually is first call the API with that parameter set to true. So filter by authorized accounts so that only accounts that have already been used with your apps are displayed to the user. And if you get a no credential exception, meaning that no account on the device has been used before for your app, then call back, and now this time without setting it to true, so that all accounts will be displayed to the user. So that's one important call out. I think it's very important to be mindful about that parameter and make sure that you are setting it in the right way. The second call out. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Can I just interject there? So, so what we want to do is to make the sign-in experience as easy as possible for users, right? So I, as a developer, when my application starts up, I want to make sure that if the user has signed in before, that I offer them, hey, here are some of the accounts that you've used before with the application. Pick one of them, and then it's just a single tap, and you'll be inside the application. How can I find out if they have signed into the application before?
So I can show you here. So do you see that the default value is true? That's what Diego just said is the recommended way, because this way you are saying only show the accounts that have been previously used to this app. So this is when I call this method for the first time, it picks up on the true here, and then it filters only the authorized accounts. If the user has never used this app before, therefore there's no available accounts to sign in straight away, we will hit this point. We'll get a no credential exception. And then that means no one has signed in before. Let's change the filter to false so we can have all the available authenticated accounts and providers shown in the Credential Manager UI, which is what's happening here. So if filter was true, then now we launch the bottom sheet again, the same flow, but this time we set the filter to false, which then will allow the user to have all their options there. And then from the next time they open the app on, this will be true again, but then we will receive an account from Credential Manager because we already used that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. And just to be clear, so in that catch phrase down there that you showed me, the method that you're calling, launch credman bottom sheet, that is the exact function that we are currently in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. So I've got that. Diego, I know that you wanted to launch into a second point, but I've got one other question that I'm desperate to know the answer to. Where is the information that the user has already used this application before stored? Is it stored locally on the device? Is it stored somewhere on Google's backends? And is there a way how I, as a developer, can reset this information, for example, in my own testing? Because I want to make sure that I can run through all the different states that my application can be in.
Yes, there is. So the information, and then Diego, correct me if I'm wrong, but the information is stored on the server side on Credential Manager itself, because it's literally like I will only get this information as a developer if Credential Manager throws me this exception, which makes me think Credential Manager is storing information.
Right. Well, yes, and a subtlety there. It's not actually Credential Manager like the Android API. It's the Google servers that have like the Google account that has what we call an active grant that sort of links the Google account with the app. And so when the user has used and consented to use their Google account to sign in with Google, in this case for the Notes app, there will be a relationship stored in the Google backend that will say, hey, the Google account for this user has consented to create this grant, and that information will be stored in the backend. Now, as a user, I can go to my account at google.com and then find the kind of third-party connections. That there is a settings page where I can see all the apps where I have used signing with Google and where I have existing grants. And if I want to clear that, it's possible to delete that, in which case, as a developer, I can go through all the testing scenarios and test like, hey, if I don't have a grant, how this will work. If I have a grant, how this will work, and so on and so forth. I can also mix and match things, etc.
Okay. That leads me to yet another question. So I don't know. So I'm an iOS developer. I don't know if you've done any iOS and sign in with Apple work, but you might be aware that a while ago, I think it must have been 1 year or maybe 2 years, Apple mandated that for any application that uses sign in with Apple, you as a developer need to provide a way for the user to say, I want to delete my account. And then you not only need to delete the user's account and their data, but you also need to revoke their refresh and access tokens, right? So and that has led to a lot of additional work that everybody had to do. We implemented support for revoking the tokens in the Firebase SDK to allow people to properly implement this. So basically, this is a programmatic way of resolving or breaking this this grant relationship between the application and sign-in with Apple. And I'm wondering if there is a similar way to do this on the Android side of things, and if we as Google even mandate developers to do that.
There is a way. So you see there is the credential manager.create_context.getCredential. So that's what we call the get call. There is also a clear credential method that will basically do what you're saying. I am not sure, to be honest, if we mandate that. But probably if we mandate, it's in the documentation. So anyone who's interested should check that out. I don't know, Marina, if you know more about that.
Yeah, the reason why I was typing, then I reminded that was probably making some noise. I'm sorry, but I was typing because I remembered the exact point in the documentation that there is. It is enforced if you are like deleting your user, if that user is no longer using the app. Peter, can you show the other screen?
Yep, I can. It's on.
Okay, yeah. So you have a clear credential state. If that is a sign out, like if the user is not going to use that app anymore, you would ideally call the clear credential state to clear any stored credential sessions from that app. If that makes sense.
Okay, amazing, cool. Diego, I interrupted you. Do you remember where you wanted to go?
Yes. So if we could go back to the Android Studio window.
There you go.
So the other thing I wanted to call out is that if you see in the request builder, right, where get credential requested builder, there is an add credential option that is being added. The next one. Sorry, below.
Sorry.
If you scroll
This one.
That one. Yeah. So you see that there in that request, we are adding at this point just a Google ID option, but that could be augmented with other options as well. I don't know, Marina, if you have implemented this, but maybe you could talk a little bit about how could we add passwords in here as well.
No, I actually haven't tried. I only use Credential Manager to sign in with Google. So how
okay.
does that work? Maybe.
Yeah, so basically the way it would work is that you would generate another option, like the one that you have above for Google ID. You would generate another one for passwords,
Okay.
and then you would add that to the request. And then when you send the request to Credential Manager, both passwords and Google ID tokens will be in the request and will be shown to the user if available. And that's quite nice because at that point, the user will see all the available options in the request and will be able to sign in with that.
I think I just saw it when you first typed the line. I saw something about password. So add credential. I think you started.
Doesn't seem like the.
Oh yeah, there you go.
But that's full.
Oh no, but yeah, that's a hint. I don't think that's the right one. Anyway, I mean, it's in the documentation, so please check it out. And I guess in a future iteration, we can add this to the sample app as well. That would be awesome.
Yeah. I really like how Credential Manager and Firebase are growing closer together. They have been growing close together in the last year, which reminds me to share that now the documentation's one link to the other, which is really nice. I really like seeing how well these two frameworks, two platforms are working together. I did have something else to share and I forgot. It's going to come back to me at some point.
I'd actually like to get a couple of questions from the live stream. So people had a couple of really interesting questions. So maybe we can start with, let me find it. So this one here. For apps that are already using the login with Google Flow, does one need to rewrite and update apps?
It depends. If you were using Google One Tap or a Smart Log, then yes, because those will be deprecated very soon. So yeah, that's the question. I don't know. That's the answer. I don't know, Diego, if you'd like to add to that.
Yeah. So if you were using one of the APIs, such as One Tap or Smart Log for passwords or Google Sign In, then yes, you need to rewrite that. Obviously, we don't want to break any user, so those APIs have been deprecated. They will be removed from the SDK surface at some point in the future. And then sometime, like further out in the future, they will stop working. So, whenever the bulk of users have migrated to Credential Manager. But, we highly recommend to start working on it now so that you don't have issues down the line. I think the other question is if they are using the Firebase UI. I don't know if there is a migration required from the developer standpoint, Marina. Can you comment there?
Yeah, for the Firebase UI, there is a migration guide available in the GitHub repository that I think Peter sent earlier.
Yep, I did. I can. Oh wait, not sure. Is it this one? No, probably this one.
No, this one. Yeah, this one at the README. There is a migration guide, and the latest version is already supporting Credential Manager and removing Smart Log. For Smart Log, if I'm not wrong, that we'll stop supporting it very soon. So if people are using it, definitely start migrating now because it is very soon. I think like in the next couple months. Should definitely start thinking about that. There is. Let me ask you, Peter, to paste a link here as well, which is the migration documentation, not for the UI, for Smart Log in general. Can I paste things on this chat? No.
You can. You have to call up the stream on YouTube, and then you can paste into the live chat.
Oh,
or you can paste the link into our internal chat, and then I'll paste it. Okay. Yeah, I have it. So
okay. Cool.
I'll paste it for you.
Yes, on developers.android.com, we have several migration guides to facilitate migrating from smart lock from passwords to Credman, from legacy Google sign-in APIs to Credential Manager, and so on. So feel free to check that out.
OK, so here is the link that you mentioned, Marina.
Yeah, this one.
Awesome. So there is another question that somebody had, and it is, will this work with Angular Fire?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. Who can we ping to get the answer to that?
Jeff, probably.
Probably. Let me ask.
OK, so we will ask this question to one of
yeah.
our teammates in the background, and then yeah, somebody else on the chat says Jeff. So maybe we'll get an answer by the end of the stream. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, I saw something else. Maybe that's more of a request rather than a question. So here is someone who says, hope to see the Java version of this method. So which leads me to the question, is this only available in Kotlin, or can I use it from Java?
You can use it for Java. I'm trying to think now. I think I have the code sample for this in Java somewhere. I think the Firebase Quick Start has. Give me 1 second. I should find it.
And while you find that, if you go to developers.android.com/identity, you can look at all the documentation that we have, and that documentation is both written in Kotlin and in Java.
OK, so cool. I'm going to paste that link as well.
Yeah, I found it. Wow, that's why I was thinking, where have I seen this before? I have done this myself. It's my code. Let me send you.
OK, so I'm sharing your browser window, but you're sending me a link?
I sent you a link, yeah. But
OK, so first of all, here's the link to go to the identity landing page that Diego mentioned. And then for the Java code that Marina just found, I'm also going to paste it into the live chat. And
it's the one
we can see it on screen right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and you should probably increase the font size, Marina.
Oh, OK.
Almost impossible to read.
Is this good enough?
Yeah, I think that's better.
Yeah. So if you go to this to the code samples, you can see the two different flows. So this is for the button. This is how you create a button option in Java, and this is how you create the bottom sheet option in Java. And then you then you create the request for that option. And the launch Credential Manager method basically just gets that request and creates the Credential Manager UI, depending on the option that you chose. And then you need to do this slightly big piece of code to have to implement the on result and basically to override the on result and on error methods. And yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah. The 80s called and asked their callbacks back.
Yeah. And also you have the code for those 3 extra steps once you have the credential, which is check that it's type Google, then create the Google ID token from their credential data, and then with this credential data, create the Firebase credential and sign into Firebase. So for Java is slightly more than 3 lines, as I had promised before. But still 3 steps, just not 3 lines for Java, unfortunately.
OK. So I'm looking through the questions on the live chat, and I think these were all of the questions so far. So folks, if you still have questions, feel free to drop them into the chat, and we will get them answered. Even after the stream has ended, you can still post questions into the comments, and we will check them and get your answers, for the next couple of days, maybe. If you're going to post a question 2 years down the line, we might no longer pay attention to this recording of the live stream. I had another question around the UX, essentially. So, when we're onboarding users to an application, we're always trying to prevent this fall off cliff where you bring in the user, and because you ask them to sign in, the very first thing, a lot of people will say, well, I haven't had a chance to try the application in the first place. I don't want to create a new account that is too bothersome. So if I understand correctly, one, Credential Manager would reduce the friction, because even if I had to create an account to actually make use of the application, it would be pretty seamless, because ideally it would be just 1 or maybe 2 clicks to pick my Google account that I'm signed into on the device. But even if we think that even that is too much, what would you recommend in terms of reducing the friction of onboarding users and giving them a good experience without having to sign in?
I can chime in here, Marina. So I think signing with Google provides exactly that value, right? Which is users don't need to one provider type in their email or their name. Those are shared from the Google account and directly. And 2, they don't even need to verify their email, because kind of it's already verified, right? And what we have seen in several apps is that when an app starts using signing with Google, their conversion rates on the onboarding flows can go up to 2x or something like that. So it's pretty high impact. So definitely that's a recommended way of doing it. Now the question then becomes, at which point the developer should trigger these, and that will be very app dependent. In some contexts, it makes sense to first have the user kind of experience the app in like a local only sort of guest mode, like the notes, right? Maybe those notes, if the user is not authenticated, they will be stored locally on the device, and that's all good. But then in settings, there will be app cells, or in the UI, there will be app cells telling the user, hey, make sure to not lose your notes if you lose your device, and sign in to like sync to the cloud or something like that. So part of the value proposition of signing in is tied to a concrete benefit that users would get, which is in this case, don't lose your notes. And I think that's what is driving, that will help drive a lot of value for users and get them signed in.
Can I add something to that?
Please.
I completely agree on having like a guest experience to allow users to try your app before they commit to creating an account or not. This friction point is definitely a reason why, and I'm speaking for myself here, but I know I'm also speaking for a lot of people. I've given up on apps before because I'm like, oh, really? I don't even know if I like this app. So why will I create an account? Why will I give all this information to these people? So definitely agree with the guest experience. And this is another thing that we have on Firebase, and that works very well with the scenario, because you don't have to store things locally on your device. You can still store in the cloud, that being if you upgrade your account to a credential account later, you can still have access to all of the notes. I'm going to use the Notes app as example. You can still have access to all these notes because they are stored in the cloud and accessible in all the other platforms that you may have your app on. And the way it works is, I'm talking about anonymous authentication on Firebase. Let me go back to the other screen. So here, one of the signing methods that I have is anonymous, and you don't have to provide any kind of information to these. You just enable it in the console, and then you can use it on your code. And then what you do is, as soon as your app is launched, you create an anonymous account, which the concept is the same of a guest account. So the user is not even aware that you created an account for them. They open the app and the account's created as soon as it starts. And from there on, any notes or any information that they store in the app are linked to that guest account on the Firebase side. And then let's say when, not if, let's be optimistic, when the user decides to upgrade to a full account, let's say, and signing with either Google or email and password or any other authentication that they provide, but in this case, use Credential Manager to signing with Google, then that Firebase credential that we create from the ID token, we use that to link with the anonymous account and upgrade that account to a full credential account. So the data that was once anonymous now is linked to a real, let's call it a real user on Firebase. And then they can sign out and sign in again in any of the other platforms, so an iOS app or a web app, and they will still have access to all of this data. And the only thing that changes on the flow that we showed before is that instead of saying Firebase auth signing with Google, it's going to be link account, like Firebase auth link account, and then you send the new credential, and that's linked to that account. So
so that is just a different call on the Firebase API then.
Yeah, it's literally just a different call, but you can provide the best of both worlds. You can provide the guest experience with security, because everything is behind the authentication system, and you can provide the, let's call it like a one-tap experience once the user decides to sign in with Credential Manager and Google.
Okay, cool. So I have another question, but first let's take one more from the stream. This one here. If I press the delete provider button, will it delete all the user accounts too? So I think, yeah, that's for the Firebase console.
For the Firebase console, yeah. I don't want to give the wrong answer. Like, I want to say my first thought was to say no, because it's not linked to. But I don't know, Peter. Do you remember the answer to that?
Yeah, I'm stumped as well, because honestly, this is the first time I see that button.
I don't know if I can show my users are only my accounts anyway. But
yeah, I mean,
test.
I mean, you could, yeah, give it a try. I mean, what can go wrong?
It's just a test app at this point. Okay, understand that users
maybe, wait. Stop. Why don't you delete? Delete the anonymous ones, because I imagine setting up Google might be more complicated. But that's just me.
Yeah. But one thing, I don't think we'd need to go to that extent, because it already answers it. I understand that signing via this provider will no longer be able to sign in. But it doesn't say if they will be deleted, right? So let's try it.
Okay, let's do it.
Nope, still here. So they exist in the user base, but they are no longer able to use their accounts, to sign in with their accounts.
Yeah. Okay. Exciting.
Exciting.
I think my heart rate raised a little bit.
Same.
So
just never it's not a quiz.
Yeah, it's not a quiz. Yeah.
I did click on the refresh button. No, it didn't change. They were still there.
Okay, so here's a question about the stream. I just saw the last few minutes of this live stream. Will you please make an overview of this? The recording of this will be live on the YouTube channel. So if you want to watch the first part of it, you'll be able to do that after the stream ends. It should be in our playlist. And you can also see all of the other live streams that we did before. So we're doing these on a more or less regular basis, about every month or so. And yeah, maybe here's a question for all of you on the stream, and also everybody who's watching after the stream ends. Let us know if you'd also like to see some live coding, right? So now we have an interview where we bring people from the product team in, but I've also been toying around with the idea of would it be fun if Noe and I try to build some application and see where it takes us? And it would be fun for people to watch on how both of us struggle with typing while talking and being on stream and struggling with bugs and all of that. So if that is something you're interested in, let us know. And this might be an additional after hours live stream that we would do in addition to this kind of more interviewee, demo-y approach.
Can I be a guest again in that case? And we can
of course. Of course. But if you tell your neighbor to stop drilling.
Okay, fair.
But it wasn't too bad after all. So I have one more question.
Can I just do some, say one thing first?
Please.
Because you mentioned that all the live stream episodes are on the YouTube channel, and I had this tab opened here anyway. So for the person who asked for an overview, you can watch this episode, of course, but also for everything that Diego and I are covering today, is very detailed in these 3 videos right here in the channel. So it's a series of 3 videos that you kind of need to watch them in order. But we explain everything from the concept to setting up the console to getting the SHA-1 key and what every one of these steps means. And also there is a code part on this last one as well. So yeah, these 3 videos here pretty much sum up what we said in this live stream.
Amazing. And they're also linked in the documentation, I understand.
Yes, from the Firebase Authentication, you can land on these videos from the Firebase Authentication documentation.
Great. So here's my my kind of final question. Can I also sign in using Apple, using Credential Manager? Is that possible?
It's not possible as of now, but we are always exploring ways to expand the support of Credential Manager. And one of the things that we have on the roadmap is how to support, there is a new standard. It's a web standard. It's called Federated Credential Manager, which is how different IDPs on the web, IDPs are like Google, Apple, Facebook, LinkedIn, and whatnot, can be integrated into a website. And so we are discussing whether we should integrate a similar approach on Credential Manager as well on Android, so that users can benefit from that feature as well. So stay tuned. Okay. We may have updates.
That sounds exciting. So in the meantime, would it be possible to somehow plug my own custom authentication provider? Let's say I have, even if I don't use sign up with Apple, I might be a large enterprise and I might have a custom authentication system.
It is technically possible, yes. Now it's easier if you were to do that with passkeys, honestly, because that's already set up. It's already based on open standards. Yep. And if you're an enterprise customer, you can also benefit from Android's, enterprise policies and device management controls, meaning that you can set rules like, hey, I only want on devices that are managed or in the work profile, I only want users using the approved enterprise passkey provider. And then the users will only be able to get passkeys from that provider or create passkeys in that provider. And those passkeys will be, displayed to the user via Credential Manager.
That is very good advice. Let me check if we have more questions on the stream. It doesn't look like. Did we miss anything that do you think we should absolutely talk about, and we can't possibly end the stream without you showing this or mentioning it?
I'm trying to think, but I can't remember now. Diego, did you cover all the points that you thought were?
Yeah, I mean, I think as usual, please give it a try. Send us feedback. If there's anything we can do to improve in the documentation, in the product, in the experience. We are always looking at ways of making sure that we are delivering the best to our users and to our developers. And so feel free to reach out. There are some feedback forms in the documentation, so you can submit issues and request in that channel as well.
Mm-hmm. So using those feedback forms in the documentation is the best way to get in touch with you, or is it the bug tracker, or do you have user voice?
The bug tracker is linked there in the documentation, and so yes, we actively look into the issues being filed, and we try to keep those close and manage in a reasonable time frame. So yes, that is the recommended way of providing feedback.
Okay. Cool. All right. So Marina, here's some piece of feedback for the sample. It seems unknown in JVM target 21 in the Notes app.
Yeah, I am searching into this now, and I think it may be an Android Studio configuration based on what I'm searching now. Yeah, it seems like the runtime that you have for your JVM cannot run that code. Can you try going into Android Studio? If you open Android Studio and go into settings, there are the build tools where you can, if you go to build tools Gradle, you can choose the Gradle JDK, and then you can, if you choose maybe JetBrains runtime 17, which is available through Android Studio, you will be able to run that code. So it's a configuration on your Android Studio, basically. You just have to go to the build Gradle tools and change the runtime.
Okay, cool. So one last question from someone on the stream. In the future, shall we be able to store other user data in the auth object instead of setting this from the server? For example, custom claims. That is probably a Firebase question, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, there are some user data that we can store for the user profile, right? Like name, profile, picture, email, some data. But customer claims is not something that we support yet, and I don't have a view on the roadmap for supporting that. Do you know anything else about this, Peter?
It's a good question. I don't know. Yeah, we'd probably have to look into it more, and we can come back on this. So we'll post an answer on the stream once we get one. Which reminds me, did you get an answer from Jeff about Angular Fire?
So Jeff is out of office. For Android is not available at the moment. I'm gonna try Cynthia. So also another thing that we promise for the future, because I don't think we're gonna have an answer in the next couple minutes.
Okay, cool.
But I will speak to one of them and get that answer.
Yeah. All right. Cool. And with that, I think we are at the end of today's stream. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks for all the good questions on the chat. For everything that we weren't able to answer, we will get answers, post them in the comments to the video below. Please do us a favor, leave a comment, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. It sounds weird, but it really helps us out. And if you would like to see Noe and me do some live coding, please also leave a comment below or reach out to us on social media, whichever platform you prefer. And maybe you even have an idea of what we should do. I hear outpainting is something that some people are interested in. So I wonder if Noe has something in the pipeline for that. Marina, Diego, thanks for joining. It was great fun. And I will see everybody on the next one.
Yes, hopefully. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for inviting us, and thanks everyone for bringing questions as well. It's really nice to have this kind of like live experience with the community. And yeah, hope to be back in After Hours soon.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very
All
much.
right. Bye all.